Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very important live stream. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. In a couple of seconds, you will hear President Trump. You will hear top officials in President Trump's administration explain the tariffs and why they're needed and why President Trump has been the only president, the only American leader to actually implement the value system, the objectives and the goals of Bernie Sanders, President Obama, and other Democrats who routinely campaigned back in the day on outsourced jobs and how other countries were taking our jobs and how manufacturing needed to be brought back into the country. This is going to be a very informative segment. Hit subscribe to this channel really quickly. We're going to have, and by the way, to my super chat, thank you. We're going to have probably the next week, next couple of months, turbulence in the stock market. I've been telling you for a while there's going to be a stock market crash, but that's a whole other story. The market crashing now is a short-term phenomenon, okay? There has to be incentives for companies to open up manufacturing facilities and plants and businesses in the United States of America, to make products in the United States of America, to ensure that other countries buy our products in the manner that we buy their products. We have over $1 trillion trade deficit. This is catastrophic, ladies and gentlemen. So you have Doge and Musk finding endless waste and fraud, rampant waste, rampant corruption, to cut the $1.8 trillion deficit and lower the national debt, which, of course, Democrats don't want for some reason. And then you have President Trump standing up to other countries in the manner that Bernie Sanders was talking about for years. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. This is a reminder, a very important trip down memory lane. You will hear Bernie Sanders in a second. You will hear President Obama in a second. You will hear President Trump and leaders within his administration explaining why this is very good for the country. This chart behind me, 21% increase, by the way, in 4 years under Trump. Robert, God bless you. Thank you. Leyland, everybody here, God bless you all. Thank you so very, very much. Hit subscribe. 4 years of increased prices, 21% higher than they were prior to President Trump taking 21% higher than when Biden first took office. Okay, really quickly, let's listen to Bernie Sanders. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. And it was the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. Okay, nobody was more, you could say, I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but nobody believed that Bernie Sanders was the real deal, more so than me. And I was dreadfully wrong. If I could go back and write about how great President Trump was going to be, I would have done so. Bernie Sanders is basically a person who pretends to be Donald Trump. Listen to this.
Was TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like Donald Trump. How would your trade policies differ from the current administration's in a way that would benefit Iowa?
Good. Not only did I oppose the TPP, I helped lead the effort against NAFTA, helped lead the effort against permanent normal trade relations with China. These were disastrous trade agreements that have cost us something like 4 million decent paying jobs in the Midwest and all over this country.
Sure, that's exactly what President Trump has been saying. That's exactly why there was the USMCA, but it's more than just the USMCA. It's more than just renegotiating trade deals. Listen to what Bernie Sanders says next about tariffs. This is exactly what President Trump and Stephen Miller and everyone, Scott Bessent, and everyone in President Trump's administration is saying. Check this out.
I believe in trade, but I believe in fair trade, not unfettered free trade. I do not believe that we should be shutting down factories in America and having corporations run to desperate countries where people are paid $1 or $2 an hour. I don't.
That is exactly, Bernie, why President Trump imposed the Liberation Day tariffs. So this is exactly President Trump's philosophy. It's just that Trump had the courage, the will, the foresight, the integrity to fight for the working class. The far left should absolutely love Donald Trump, because you have a man, even if you like Bernie Sanders, who says the same things as President Trump. Check it out, and then you'll hear Stephen Miller saying the same things as Bernie Sanders. You will hear Howard Lutnick, you will hear President Trump, you will hear Scott Bessent saying the same things as Bernie Sanders. Why is it that when Democrats say it, or quote-unquote independent, who is basically a Democrat, Bernie exists so Democrats can funnel left-leaning voters back into the Democratic Party? He has zero intention of actually being competitive in a primary because they cheated him in 2016. He will never be allowed. Democrats will never allow a far-left or quote-unquote progressive to win. They already cheated Bernie Sanders. But he was saying the same things as Trump. This was in 2019 when they cheated him also. But check this out really quickly and hit subscribe if you're new.
I do not believe that we should be shutting down factories in America and having corporations run to desperate countries where people are paid $1 or $2 an hour. I don't believe in that. So we're going to develop trade policies, not by tweet in the middle of the night. We are going to develop trade policies with the input of workers and farmers.
Workers and farmers and unions throughout the world back tariffs and subsidies. But tariffs, short-term negotiating tactics, are very important. So Bernie had no intention of ever truly implementing these strategies to help the working class, to ensure that jobs came back to the United States of America. Nobody was more indoctrinated than I was, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. The Huffington Post, like I said, you can go to hagoodman.com. You can read my writing there. Not that nobody remembers me, and nor do I want anyone to really remember any. I don't care. But my writing was read by hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people. And every single editor in charge of the politics section of the Huffington Post back in 2016, 2015, I didn't self-publish anything. It went all through the editors. It went all through the people at the Huffington Post. Okay? And there's a reason for that, which is I published a pro-Second Amendment article, which is on my hagoodman.com. I said that African Americans would benefit greatly through the Second Amendment to protect civil rights. And after that, I wasn't allowed to actually hit publish. So all of my articles were read or looked over and then published when it came to Bernie Sanders in 2015 and 2016 by editors at the Huffington Post, which is totally fine, which is wonderful. I thank them for doing that. I think that was very honorable and wonderful, and I thought that was great. And Salon reached out to me, and we can go on forever, but anyway, and I think that was wonderful also. But anyway, Bernie did not have the guts or the courage or the integrity or the willpower or any of the traits that Trump possesses. This is the exact same thing that President Trump has been saying. Why do I have to be so pedantic in these there's one liberal pundit who's hilarious. He's 3 million plus subs. He's the most pedantic. He articulates and he's so pedantic, but then it's so easy to like decipher that he's being deceitful. But anyway, let's listen to this again in its entirety.
Disastrous trade agreements that have cost us something like 4 million decent paying jobs in the Midwest and all over this country. I believe in trade, but I believe in fair trade, not unfettered free trade. I do not believe that we should be shutting down factories in America and having corporations run to desperate countries where people are paid $1 or $2 an hour. I don't believe in that. So we're going to develop trade policies, not by tweet in the middle of the night. We are going to develop trade policies with the input of workers and farmers, trade policies that work for ordinary people, not just the CEOs of large corporations.
Tariffs?
When tariffs are necessary, absolutely. We'll use all the tools that.
When tariffs are necessary, absolutely. Democrats kept Trump's initial tariffs, and you heard it here from Bernie. Okay, when tariffs are necessary, he knew very well that Democrats would never allow him to even get close to the presidency or to become a candidate, because Democrats don't want these policies that Trump is implementing, that Bernie Sanders wanted to implement. Bernie Sanders wanted the exact same things as Stephen Miller, as President Trump, as Scott Bessent, as everybody in President Trump's administration. The difference, however, is that Trump fought for the country. Trump risked his life, 2 attempts on his life for the kind. One firefighter lost his life. I would wish Bernie Sanders would bring up why that happened. But you're not going to get even an acknowledgement that Bernie Sanders was cheated in 2016. You think he has the courage to even bring up why some maniac wanted to take Trump's life and ended up taking the life of a firefighter protecting his family? You think Bernie has the courage for that? Of course not. Of course he doesn't. Are you kidding? He doesn't even. He won't even acknowledge. He wouldn't even defend a publisher and a journalist and publishers and journalists who published emails that showed that he was cheated, forcing W. Wasserman Schultz to resign in disgrace. Do you think that he has the courage to do any of these things? Of course not. He might be a good human being, good family man, grandfather, God bless him, but he doesn't have the courage to do anything that Trump is doing. And the far left is part of a cult. The Democratic Party is a social club and a pseudo-religious, an atheistic, pseudo-religious cult, political religious cult. It's an atheistic political religion. That's why they can't stand anything. Can you imagine? Well, we can go on forever. Let's continue.
We have. But the bottom line is, I want to protect family farmers here in Iowa and the Midwest and all over this country. And I want to make sure that we protect workers as well. The function of trade is not just to make large corporations wealthier.
You mentioned you opposed NAFTA.
Yes.
What about USMCA?
I'm sorry, the
USMCA, the successor.
Well, we're going to look at that. I have reservations about that. It's something that has to be studied more.
So tell me how different Bernie Sanders is from Stephen Miller. They're saying the same exact things, but Trump's administration has the guts to implement all of this. This is short term, ladies and gentlemen. Just like the onslaught, the political public relations onslaught against Tesla. You don't think Tesla is one of the greatest companies on the planet? Of course it is. Okay. I might invest in Tesla, in a couple of months or a month or so. Who knows? Who knows when the bottom of this market is going to be? It really doesn't matter. It's short term. It's short term. President Trump, it's akin to the country taking medicine for a terrible trade and foreign policy disease. We have been lied to by people like President Obama and Bernie Sanders and all the Democrats and all the Republicans, well, mainly the Democrats, but any of the Republicans that said, oh, we need to bring back jobs. We have to bring back factories. We have to build things so that people of all backgrounds, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, can get work and jobs and feed their families. So you don't need all the social safety nets, and you can alleviate poverty. What's wrong with alleviating poverty and addressing the issue of poverty head on through bringing home jobs? That's exactly what Bernie Sanders and others were saying. And now Stephen Miller is saying the same thing. But Democrats don't like it when others actually implement their alleged value system.
All right, Fox News alert here. As the selling does seem to continue in the American stock market, you've got the Dow sinking to the lows of the session as we speak right now, down 2,100 points at 38,418. Okay, so let's bring in Stephen Miller. He's at the White House. He's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Your timing is perfect because I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there who would like to know the White House thinking here. Stephen, please do share with us your thoughts in this moment, and especially after China announced these retaliatory tariffs. It seems like that's when the markets took another leg down here. Where is all of this going next?
Well, let's first establish an important foundation. The United States.
So I'm going to help educate the highly educated, morally superior liberal Democrats. If you happen to watch this, wonderful, highly educated liberal Democrats who don't like perhaps Stephen Miller or President Trump or Trump's administration or tariffs because you think that they'll increase prices, even though you said nothing about 20% plus increases in prices under Biden. Stephen Miller is literally saying the exact same things as Bernie Sanders and as President Obama. You will hear President Obama in a second. But Stephen Miller is apparently a far left or a progressive like Bernie Sanders. Listen to this.
Is 36% of global consumption, and we're more than 25% of the world's economy. Just the United States alone. That means we get to set the rules and terms for international trade. But we've done the opposite as a country for decades now. When we hear the term globalization, what does that really mean? It means taking America's wealth and shipping it to foreign countries. So all the factories that used to be in America are now in China, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Canada, Mexico.
Did Bernie Sanders just say that? Did he not say that in, 2019 and throughout his entire life? My God, people are so interested in fitting in and just, it's what's best for the country. You have to admit, if you're on the left, if you're a progressive, quote unquote, whatever that means, if you're on the far left, whatever that means, if you're a liberal Democrat, everyone's just a liberal Democrat if you vote Democrat. I don't care if you're 20 different titles, Democratic, Socialist, Libertarian, Communist, Socialist. It doesn't really matter. If you vote Democrat, you're just the same you're on the same political spectrum as Liz Cheney or Dick Cheney or Never Trumpers or Harris or Clinton or Bernie Sanders or AOC. It's the same thing. People care so much about image. They're so image conscious in North America. They're so image conscious. They can't let anyone know they like President Trump. Well, why not? If it's good for the country, if it's good for your pocketbook, think of your family, think of your finances. Instead of complaining about everything and going after Trump, why don't you ask yourself, hey, is Trump benefiting the country? Forget about ideology. Of course he is. We know this because Stephen Miller is saying the same things as Bernie Sanders, difference being Trump is actually implementing the value system of Bernie Sanders. He's trying to, and it'll work, bringing back a large amount or a certain percentage of the jobs. Okay, and the snarky rebuttals, oh, it's not really going to happen. You know, like, well, you know what? If he brings back 20 or 30% of the jobs or 40% of the jobs, that'd be fantastic. He had hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs during his first term before Democrats shut down economic activity. President Obama, in 8 years, lost 200,000 jobs, manufacturing jobs. So that's huge. But check this out. Listen to this. It's the same things as Bernie Sanders is saying.
And we're more than 25% of the world's economy, just the United States alone. That means we get to set the rules and terms for international trade. But we've done the opposite as a country for decades now. When we hear the term globalization, what does that really mean? It means taking America's wealth and shipping it to foreign countries. So all the factories that used to be in America are now in China, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Canada, Mexico, parts of Africa, India, Europe, Japan, Korea. You know where they're not? The United States of America. Because our leaders allowed foreign countries to rig the rules of the game, to cheat, to steal, to rob, to plunder. That has cost America trillions of dollars in wealth. These countries cannot win a trade fight with us because they're already the ones who have cheated. So in other words, they've stolen our industries. We have all the upside here in this fight because we can now make these industries come back because we have the market. We have the consumers they need. Japan cannot replace the American automobile market. Europe can't replace the American automobile market. They need us. And this is a fundamental issue of fairness and national security. Tell me, why is it that if you go to Tokyo, there's no American cars? If you go to Berlin, there's no American cars. But on our streets, we have every foreign car there is in the world. They've locked their markets to our cars. They have stolen from our workers and our people. And President Trump is saying that has to end. We need our wealth back and our jobs back. And the quality of America, the American quality of life, will rise exponentially as these policies kick in and as the great onshoring and return of American wealth occurs.
Are you confident we can replace that production and we can do so in a way that Americans can actually afford and like those cars?
Without question. In fact, the changes in advanced manufacturing technology, 3D printing, robotics, artificial intelligence, this makes it more and more affordable to manufacture, produce, and build at scale in the United States. American workers should not have to compete with child slave wages in Vietnam.
That is exactly what Bernie Sanders is saying. Bernie Sanders, you know, people said, there were people that I knew, a number of people that I've known for a long time said, oh, you went from Bernie Sanders to Trump for money. Nothing could be further from the truth. I lost money. Selling Make America Great Again hats in 2017 or 2018 wasn't exactly a very lucrative for a former Bernie Sanders supporter. Okay. I lost, lifelong friends. They disowned me for no reason because it's like a political cult people are in. If you had any kind of integrity back then, I'm not saying that I'm like this, did anything special, but I said Trump is doing the best job for this country. So I said, wait a second, and there's so many similarities between Bernie Sanders and Trump. But if you believe that I did that, or anyone goes from Bernie Sanders to Trump, that's because you're probably, and you don't realize, you think it's for money or you think it's for some kind of ulterior motive. That's because you're ignorant of politics. You don't understand politics. You don't understand the things that Bernie Sanders was saying and the things that President Trump has been saying. You don't understand the correlation between both, which is anti-war foreign policy, which, okay, Bernie Sanders doesn't even believe in these things, but anti-war foreign policy, that's the main thing. Anti-endless war. Stopping unfettered immigration. Bernie Sanders was for that, against the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all that stuff. But also bringing home jobs that were outsourced, stopping outsourcing. Okay, addressing wealth inequality that President Trump has done. We had record low poverty with Trump's first term. So I said to myself, it's only logical that a Bernie Sanders supporter would want record low poverty, record highs in household median income, and an anti-war foreign policy. Exactly what President Trump implemented. But Democrats accused him of being a Kremlin operative. They created this hoax called this new Cold War, and they created a hoax. It was the most absurd, completely irrational political stunt, and Bernie Sanders was a part of it also. They accused Bernie also of being influenced by that country also. But anyway, Bernie Sanders folded like a cheap suit after he was railroaded and cheated. He didn't even defend the journalist and the publisher that published those emails that Democrats wrote with their wonderful little hands. Okay? He didn't even defend. He didn't even acknowledge that he was cheated. He didn't even defend his voters. What did he do? He said, Kremlin, if you're listening, I don't want your help. He did nothing. He gets cheated in 2016, cheated 4 years later, again, and then they went after Pete Buttigieg, all the progressives. And then Trump does exactly what Bernie Sanders wanted, exactly what President Obama wanted, bringing home, trying to, with tariffs, which he will, bring home manufacturing jobs to help the working class that the Democrats care so much about. Yeah, right, but let's continue. Only Trump has the guts to do these things, while Democrats feel good about themselves pretending to do them and then just lying about it.
They should not have to. That is wrong. We do not need a global race to the bottom that says that American workers have to earn the same wages and work in the same conditions as the poorest workers in the third world. That's the system that we've had. With the right tax policy, the right regulation policy, the right trade policy, and investing in advanced manufacturing, all of these industries and supply chains can come back home. But here's the thing, it's not a choice. It's a national security imperative. Well, what would happen if there was a war and we didn't have the ability to manufacture our own steel, our own aluminum, our own medicine, our own automobiles, our own aircraft? What would happen to the United States of America? It is a fundamental matter of national survival.
Yeah, well, we got a glimpse of that during COVID, right? When people couldn't get what they needed, we learned so much of it was being made outside of the United States. And how about the food industry? This was really interesting perspective right here on America Reports last hour from a shrimper. Listen.
We've been getting killed by imports for not just years, but literally decades. So we've been suffering for a long, long time. And these tariffs, we believe, are going to give us some immediate relief. We've outsourced our whole industry. 94% of the shrimp consumed in the United States is imported.
Okay, so he shared with us he's optimistic that this could help his industry survive. And they've seen a decline for decades now because all of these, all the shrimp's been coming in from all these other countries into the United States. Low quality shrimp, he pointed out. But there's fears.
By the way, a lot of the seafood that we're importing has formaldehyde in it, is not safe for consumption. And this whole situation, people have to understand just how badly we've been ripped off as a country. You heard that, gentleman. 94% of shrimp is imported to the United States, and we have the Gulf of America. The U.S. agriculture and seafood industry has been decimated because we allow for subpar, cheap foreign imports without limit that are subsidized by foreign countries to put our farmers and our shrimpers out of business while their markets are close to ours. Can someone explain to me? We protect and defend South Korea, and in exchange, defend Canada, and they run up a massive trade deficit with us. We protect and defend all of Europe at a cost of trillions of dollars over time, and what do? They run an over $300 billion trade deficit with the United States.
And I can't believe this. I mean, it's just on, a couple, I just looking at some shows on YouTube, and there's some Canadian talk show hosts or, sportscasters, and I can't believe what I'm hearing. That they were turning on the great one, Wayne Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky is a national treasure of Canada and the United States of America. He is the epitome of an icon, like Michael Jordan, like Gordie Howe. He is like a Babe Ruth type of, and it was really wonderful. Alexander Ovechkin just broke his record. Really beautiful moment. And he was there to congratulate, just like Gordie Howe congratulated Wayne Gretzky. But you hear Canadian commentators, and you could see the comments section. Oh, Bobby Orr, one of the greats also. Oh, Bobby Orr and Wayne Gretzky. Oh, you can't separate sport. You can't separate sports icons. I think LeBron James is one of the greatest, if not the greatest. I mean, I say Michael Jordan, but if not LeBron James, the greatest one of the greatest basketball players. You could say top 3. You could say number 1 easily. He doesn't like President Trump. Does that mean I'm not going to watch a De Niro movie? But I don't understand this mentality from the wonderful, morally superior liberals in Canada or the U.S. or other countries. You want everyone to just be okay with celebrities and athletes and everybody else that disagrees with Trump. But God forbid, somebody has an opinion that's favorable to Trump. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. They're even turning. It would be the equivalent. I mean, Canadians turning on Wayne Gretzky is like the equivalent of Americans turning on Babe Ruth. You know anyone who would turn on Babe Ruth? Or Hank Aaron, or any of the great legendary, or Jim Brown, or Walter Payton, like all the one. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable to me how utterly indoctrinated people can be when they turn on icons that did nothing to them other than have an opinion. That's it. And you see that Bernie Sanders and Stephen Miller have the same viewpoint. Only one political side actually fights for the working class. That's Trump. The left just talks and looks at themselves in the mirror and then does something to themselves while they're looking at themselves in the mirror.
Why should America protect the world, send foreign aid to the world, defend the world, provide for the world, and in exchange get ripped off by every other country in the world? And what do we have to show for it? The deindustrialization of the heartland, the destruction of the American dream, the eradication of our industrial and manufacturing base that we need for our national security, and the crushing of the American dream. It has to stop, not to mention $36 trillion in debt.
I've only got a few seconds left, but people are throwing around the R word, and they see the Dow down 2,100 points, and people are worried about a recession. They're worried that we can't do this without sending this economy into such a deep dive that we can't come back from it. And I know you guys are all about growth. I know you're about lowering taxes, rolling back regulations, and seeing that growth. Are you concerned that this is going to put us into a recession?
The exact opposite. We inherited from Joe Biden an economy in total free fall. There has been zero jobs growth for American workers in 4 years. In other words, all jobs growth had gone to foreign workers. That is a depression, not a recession. That is a depression for the American worker. We had debt and deficits that were rising unsustainably that would lead us into a certain debt and deficit crisis. We had inflation that was in high double digits, crushing the American family, making it impossible to afford the essentials of life. We had an economy that was in a state of calamity and catastrophe. President Trump's policy of reshoring our supply chains, pushing for total expensing of capital gains, eliminating regulation, eliminating intrusive green new scam environmental rules, pushing for the biggest, broadest tax cut in American history, and reducing taxes on American workers, including ending taxes on tips, ending taxes on overtime, ending taxes on Social Security. This economic program is the single most important program for American wealth, prosperity, and rejuvenation that we've ever seen in this country.
All right, I'd love to continue the conversation. Hope to have you back on.
So this is on X, ladies and gentlemen, and it's President Obama saying the exact same things in 2008 as President Trump and Stephen Miller and Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick and others within President Trump's administration saving this country, doing exactly what President Obama said he was going to do but didn't do, doing exactly what Bernie Sanders said he would do but never even got close to doing. Check this out.
Deals like NAFTA that put special interests over workers' interests. And it's because of this long-standing commitment to working families that I will not sign any trade agreement as president that does not have protections for our environment and protections for American workers.
NAFTA needs to be amended. And I've already said that I would contact the President of Mexico and the Prime Minister of Canada to make sure that the labor...
Gee, who did that? Who did that to ensure? Oh, that's right, Trump did.
Actually enforceable in the same way that patent protections and other things that are important to corporate America are enforceable.
Point number 2 on trade. John is exactly right that you travel around South Carolina and you see the textile mills that John's father worked in, closed all over the region. And it is absolutely true that NAFTA was a mistake. I know that Hillary, on occasion, has said that this was, just last year, said this was a boon to the economy. I think it has been devastating because our trade agreements did not have labor standards and environmental standards that would assure that workers in the U.S. were getting a square deal. And it is absolutely critical for us to understand that NAFTA was an enormous problem. The permanent trade relations with China, without some of the enforcement mechanisms that were in there, that you voted for, was also a significant problem. And we've got to all move forward as Democrats to make sure that we've got trade deals that work for working people and not just for corporate profits.
Before we turn the questioning over to Tim Russert, Senator Obama.
Well, I think that it is inaccurate for Senator Clinton to say that she's always opposed NAFTA. In her...
Do you remember when Democrats were campaigning against NAFTA? Do you remember? So Trump is an early 2000s Democrat.
She said that NAFTA, on balance, had been good for New York and good for America. I disagree with it. I think that it did not have the labor standards and environmental standards that were required in order to not just be good for Wall Street, but also be good for Main Street. And if you travel through Youngstown and you travel through communities in my home state of Illinois, you will see entire cities that have been devastated as a consequence of trade agreements that were not adequately structured to make sure that U.S. workers had a fair deal.
If trade agreements are written only with corporate profits and Wall Street in mind and not with its possible effects on Main Street, then we're only seeing half of the equation, and we've got to take those into account.
But what I refuse to accept is that we have to sign trade deals like the South Korea agreement that are bad for American workers. We'll always oppose our trade deals that put the interests of Wall Street ahead of the interests of American workers. That's why I oppose NAFTA. That's why I voted against CAFTA. That's why it didn't make sense to normalize trade relations with China without asking more from China. I will oppose the...
That is exactly what Stephen Miller and President Trump and everyone in President Trump's administration has been saying. Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, everyone in President Trump's administration. So I don't understand how suddenly, oh, the tariffs. Well, how do you expect to do these things? It's been 20 plus years. No, 30 plus years. And jobs have been leaving the country. And watch as jobs come back, and then Democrats will find another thing to obsess about.
If George Bush is insistent on sending it to Congress because the violence against unions in Colombia would make a mockery of the very labor protections that we've insisted be included in these kinds of agreements. You can trust me when I say that whenever trade deals we negotiate come to my desk, they are going to be good for American workers. that they'll have powerful labor and environmental protections, and that we will enforce those protections.
Obama, or fix it. I would immediately call the President of Mexico, the President of Canada, to try to amend NAFTA, because I think that we can get labor agreements in that agreement right now, and it should reflect the basic.
That is exactly what Trump did. And it's what President Obama campaigned on. It's exactly what President Trump did. Not even a thank you. Not one thank you from Bernie Sanders or Democrats.
Trade agreements should not just be good for Wall Street, it should also be good for Main Street. And the problem that we've had is that we've had corporate lobbyists oftentimes involved in negotiating these trade agreements, but the AFL-CIO hasn't been involved. Ordinary working people have not been involved. And we've got to make sure that our agreements are good for everybody, because globalization right now is creating winners and losers. But the problem is it's the same winners and the same losers each and every time. This is the same person.
That's exactly the same thing as what Stephen Miller was saying. The difference is that President Obama and Bush and Biden didn't do anything different from one another. That's why jobs kept leaving the country. Every administration, Republican or Democrat, jobs kept leaving the country. Then President Trump comes in and says, we're going to get manufactured, we're going to build things. Then the rebuttal is, oh my God, how can we compete with, such low wages in other countries? Aha, that's the issue. You want to ensure that it's cheaper or better, or you want to ensure that it's better to produce things in the United States of America, so poverty is alleviated, so you can rebuild manufacturing, so you have especially industries that are part of national security. You want to build things here the way we used to build things, so you can have a more vibrant, stronger middle class before AI robots take over everything, and then people have to get a basic wage. Forgot it. You'd have to get that. Okay, because there won't be any jobs if things aren't produced by people who live in this country and purchased by people who live in this country. And if other countries don't purchase what we make, that's a big problem too. $1 trillion+ trade deficit.
A decade with her husband campaigning for NAFTA, and now goes around saying how she was opposed to NAFTA.
So Democrats not long ago didn't like NAFTA. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Let's continue.
Secretary Howard Lutnick is with us. All right, what are we missing here? And I'm going to scroll all these countries that have been abusing and stealing from us, as far as I'm concerned, including allied countries for years. And why have we let them get away with this for so long? Why are people saying that, oh, this is terrible, that we're saying you can have free and fair trade, or if you're going to put tariffs on us, we'll put them on you? How is that not fair?
It was just soft politicians. I mean, as President Trump said, it was the people in the Oval Office. I mean, the European Union won't take chicken from America. They won't take lobsters from America. They hate our beef because...
Oh, you'll take our chicken now, Europe, won't you? Oh, you will take our chicken. Oh, you're going to take our chicken and lobsters. Okay? Because if you don't take the chicken and lobsters, you're going to get tariffed into oblivion. Yeah.
Because our beef is beautiful and theirs is weak. It's unbelievable. We can't sell corn to India. We can't sell rice to Asia. Why in the world do we let these people sell their cars? 94% of cars in Japan are made in Japan. They just block us. And finally, the man behind the Resolute desk, the man in the Oval Office, Donald Trump, is finally standing up for our farmers, our ranchers, and our
Hey, guy, hello, thank you. Remember the crickets? Yes, the crickets. Then I had before that the bobbleheads, and then I had the loud crickets. I only have the best studios possible. Thank you, A-Guy. Thank you. Greatly appreciated again to my super chat. Thank you.
Manufacturers to let the world understand either they're buying our products or don't bother coming here unless you're paying for the right to come.
All right, let me scroll something else, and that is, since...
Oh my God, one big thing was, how are these tariffs calculated? Oh, we have these small islands that they're getting tariffed also. Oh, cheer up. Oh, cheer up. We've spoken to these economists, and they don't know how the tariffs are being calculated. Well, it's part of the whole point is to slash the trade deficit. So the well over $1 trillion trade deficit. And so that's what basically all the tariffs in 180 countries or so, that's what it's about. It's not necessarily that each country correlates directly to the exact tariff that the wonderful liberal Democrats who don't like these tariffs think the country deserves. Okay, in many cases, in a lot of cases, the tariffs that Trump imposed are less than what the country imposes upon the United States of America. But oh my God, we spoke to these people. Don't you understand? Trump doesn't know what he's doing in terms of how he calculated the tariffs. Just don't worry about it. Focus on American jobs coming back. And if the world is given incentive to buy American products, this is not difficult. And then they say, oh, would Milton Friedman want like it? Well, Milton Friedman would think that Biden's policies are like, Satan incarnate. But anyway, let's continue.
Donald Trump began this pressure campaign and threatening tariffs, a lot of money has been pledged for investments in our country. It's been pledged by foreign countries, $1.5 trillion by the UAE, $1 trillion, for example, by Saudi Arabia. Hyundai, $20 billion, $500 billion over 4 years, a new factory Apple is going to build in Texas, and they're going to expand out other facilities around the country. We have a Taiwanese company, Nissan and Honda. We're going to build plants in Mexico. They're now building them here, and I can go on and on. So I added up to be over $4 trillion committed only because of the threat of tariffs. I got to imagine that a lot of these countries are not going to like the tariffs that go into effect tonight at midnight, and they're going to want to negotiate. You think I'm wrong?
No, they're going to want to negotiate. But these are the same people who have been ripping us off for all these years. Remember, the tariffs are only part of the issue. It's these non-tariff trade barriers where they just won't let you trade. They provide subsidies back, like they charge this VAT tax, right? And they always say, oh, it's not the VAT tax. You know what some of these countries do? They take that 20% tax and they give it back to their producers. So they crush our people. It's got to end, and what's going to happen is you're going to see the greatest renaissance of manufacturing in America. $4 trillion investing in America. That's going to create the most incredible set of jobs. Tradecraft is going to come back to America. People, a high school educated workforce is going to get trained to do robot mechanic, HVAC, but in high tech, fabs for semiconductors. I mean, the coolest jobs, the highest paying jobs, they're all coming to America, and Donald Trump is bringing them in because we're tired of having them built in Taiwan. We're tired of having it built in South Korea. It's time for these things to be built in America, and these jobs are coming home.
One last question.
Then you got the hyperventilating. Some of these small countries are actually buying more from us than we buy from them. Oh, Trump. Yeah, and so we want them to buy more from us. Even more. What's wrong with that? Oh, Trump. He doesn't know how the calculations are wrong. Who cares? The whole point is, you heard Bernie Sanders, you heard President Obama. Democrats have been, NAFTA was a dirty word to Democrats not long ago. And you heard Bernie Sanders say tariffs, inappropriate. Now it's appropriate. We are going to be surpassed big time by China and India in the next 10 to 20 years. This is the last moment in American history where we'll have this type of leverage.
When you talk to leaders and your counterparts in other countries, are they telling you privately, we think it's time to negotiate?
It's unbelievable when I talk to these people. They say, I can't believe we got away with it for this long. I mean, seriously,
they tell you that.
It is outrageous, the conversations we have. Of course they do. I mean, come on. They don't take our products and they sell everything. Here's one quick story for you. In Korea, we started taking their cars in 2012 in exchange for us for selling produce and food there and aggregate away and let McDonald's take in French fries. That is absurd.
All right.
So you have... Let's listen to this. This is Bernie Sanders not long ago. Well, actually long ago, somewhat. This was in 2003, not long ago. Well, a little ways back. Oh, how times have changed. He sounded exactly like Stephen Miller, exactly like Howard Lutnick, exactly like President Trump, exactly like Scott Bessent. Let's listen to this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight I want to focus on some very important issues which impact the middle class of our country, and I do that as the only independent in the U.S. House of Representatives. And as an independent, the views that I am going to express are somewhat different than the views of many of my colleagues. The first point that I want to make is, in a sense, an obvious point to most people in this country, especially perhaps the 50 or 60% of the American people who have given up on the political process and no longer vote. And that is that in Washington, D.C., in the White House and in the United States Congress, money, big money, plays an enormous role. There is a reason, and I'm going to get into this in greater length in a moment, there is a reason why we are hemorrhaging decent paying manufacturing jobs, and those jobs are going to China, where workers there are paid 50 cents an hour, and why corporate America is laying off millions of American workers to take jobs abroad. And one of the reasons that we have a disastrous trade policy is the huge amounts of money that come into Congress, that go into the White House, which have opened up access so that these corporations can go a long way toward destroying decent paying jobs in America. Money talks.
So, Bernie, you are 100% backing President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. You are, so is that what you're saying? This is fantastic. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Bernie Sanders, 2003, 22 years ago, Bernie Sanders. So you're backing President Trump. This is a fantastic moment in U.S. history. A far-left, progressive, independent hereby, I'll do it for you, Bernie, so you don't have to. Everything I just said about outsourcing jobs 22 years ago and about 5 years ago, no, 6 years ago, talking about tariffs being, if they're necessary, so be it. I just want to hereby say, Trump, let bygones be bygones. I support you 100%. 100%. And I don't care if Debbie Wasserman is upset with me. And I don't care if the Democrats investigate me for whatever. I don't care if they accuse me of being a puppet of another country like they did with you when they made up everything and then forced me to go along with it. I'm going to just say, Trump, kudos to you. Kudos to you, Trump, for bringing American jobs back, which is what I've been saying, which is my shtick. I've been saying it for a couple decades now. Of course, I don't really mean it, because if I really meant it and they cheated me like they did in 2016, I would have said something about it. I would have actually raised a fuss. But instead, I'm very happy they turned me into a refrigerator magnet with my little crotchety mittens, my hand mittens. Remember that? When Sleepy Joe was being inaugurated before George Clooney said that he had to step out of the way. Move, Joe, get out the way. Remember that song years back? And so, thank you and kudos to you, Stephen Miller. Lots of people don't like you on the left, but gotta say, you're a good guy. You're a good person. Bringing American jobs back through tariffs and Liberation Day tariffs and making sure that manufacturing comes back to the U.S. What could be better? And ensuring that immigration laws are enforced, and also ending nuclear confrontations. Everything that I stand for, that I pretend to stand for, that I don't have the strength to stand for. Anyway, I support you, Trump. So, there's pretty much what he means, but I guess doesn't have the ability to say. Anyway, this is the hyperventilating will continue this week and tomorrow. It's going to be at the end of the world. No! Trump tariffs. And then you get the snarky. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing when you lost every battleground state? The House, the Senate, the popular vote, the presidency, the Supreme Court, lowest approval ratings ever for Democrats. Do you know what you're doing? Keep doing what you think you're doing, Democrats. Thank God Trump's adversaries are the greatest imbeciles in American political history. Thank God. Otherwise, it would have been bad. Okay, they tried every possible thing. Stormy, Kremlin. Everyone is yawning now. They're like, oh, whatever. It doesn't, what? Prices went up 21%. And the same people who are talking about the stock market are the same people that ignored these price increases. Okay? Inflation went up, interest rates exponentially. You're talking about mortgage rates going from 2.6 to over 7%. Okay? And so Democrats routinely vote against their interests, but as long as you have Bernie Sanders, President Obama, and progressives and liberal pundits, it is an indoctrination machine. It's like an atheistic religious cult. And so you're going to see the market will be down tomorrow also. And it'll be the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, and all of that. But at the end of the day, Trump is going to bat for the working class. All these communists and socialists and progressives and college campuses, they should love Trump. Okay, all these like these punk rockers from the 70s, some of whom like Trump, but you see like these punk rockers from the 70s and 80s. Some of them don't like Trump. It's like Trump is the definition of punk rock. He's the definition of punk rock. He's the definition of rock and roll. It's like Trump is doing things that the establishment wouldn't do, couldn't do, and lied about for 30, 40 years. Okay? Oh, at least 30 years. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll probably have exactly. It's a cult that worships political power. It's a cult that worships also their own emotions. But I'll be back tomorrow, probably around 5 p.m. tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, Eastern, maybe earlier. But hit subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you so very, very much. I might do one at 11 a.m. Eastern. I'm not sure. But I'll see you tomorrow, everybody.